That person around me? This is the class. Can I ask him a question real quick? Yeah. Yo, Verser, it's Carter.
Hey guys.
Do you want me to sign on my own laptop, or can we use this one?
Whatever works for you guys.
Well, this is fine with me, but I just don't want to be like marked absent by accident.
What?
I just don't want to be like accidentally marked absent or something.
You're not going to be marked absent. Don't worry.
Well, so one more question. So I worked with Elliot on our project last night.
Right.
Do you want us to both submit both?
Yes. Everyone submits their own copy, even if you worked in Teams and did the exact same file.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
That's it. You guys, we're just waiting for everybody else to show up.
We're in the studio. Do you want us to check out equipment now or wait?
You know, you certainly can. Hang on one second, though. If you take a look at my screen really quick or log into your own, look at your, go to our class. And in our class, if you go to section number 9, I had to redo teams because some of the teams that are originally designed to work today are not in the studio. So if you were looking at this stuff earlier, the teams have changed. So if you take a look either on your screen at teams for week 9 or take a look at my screen, these are the teams for week 9 right here. Let me zoom this open a little bit. And Angel, you're the only one not on team because you're the only one who is was not going to be in the studio or have somebody else. So unfortunately, you're by yourself, but I'll be your teammate. So Jessica, back to your answer. Today is going to be setting up on tabletop. So you'll need a tabletop space. You'll need a white seamless and 4 heads, and then we can talk about what else you'll need. Grab a color card too, if you can lay your hands on one. That'd be a good start. screen? Can you see Capture One and the studio?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. We're going to start doing the majority of the work in the studio first. And let me just get this camera reset a little bit so you have a little bit better idea of what's going on.
See, okay. I'm down for the interview. Reminisce about my old life.
All right, so I think you can see pretty much what's going on. I'll sort of describe things just a little bit, just so that you're aware. Today, what today is going to be all about is in my feeling, my sense, the reason I do all of this is that this is in large measure what I think is sort of the culmination of this class in terms of the lighting assisting part of this, as well as the digital tech part of it. It's all sort of pretty much intertwined. So it's in many ways, people think that this is one of the simplest things to do. I vehemently disagree. This is one of the most difficult things to do if you're going to do it correctly. And it will take into consideration the majority, if not all, the things that you have worked on and so far done in this class. So basically, at its simplest, it's shooting on dropout white. And again, most people would say, well, that's just so incredibly easy to do. I don't know, what's the challenge here? The challenge here is, like I said, in my opinion, it's huge. And I want to show you guys how to do it correctly. So this is the way things are going to go today, or at least for the rest of the, a little clarity first as well. There's a lot of confusion about what files to turn in for the homework that was due today. What I'm looking for is the set file for assignment number 1 so that I can plug it into the software and open it up and actually see your entire layout, not just the diagram, but actually the things that you used, where you put them, sort of in that real time. That's what I'm actually looking for that assignment 1. The software itself generates the diagram. All you had to do for assignment 8.2 was to go to the export tab and click on export, and it will look at your set file, whatever, and it'll spit out either a JPEG or a PDF of your lighting setup, your lighting diagram. And that's really what the software is designed for. It's designed for you to do all the work in Satellite to actually build your set and get it lit correctly. But then the diagram that comes out of it is what people then can go into a studio, hand that off to an assistant, hand that off to a team of assistants, whatever, and say, create this. And everything is all laid out. We'll look at diagramming later on, but anyway, that's basically the long and the short of it. As far as what we do today, this is going to be tabletop scale, and this is something that we can all do. As far as the homework, we'll look at the homework that's going to happen for this coming week, but the homework that's going to happen for this coming week is a ramped up version of this. So instead of doing this tabletop size, we are going for the homework. I want you to do it full length size. So again, it's the same principle, but we're going to scale it up to be able to shoot full figure. Now, clearly some of you are very comfortable in being in the studio. So if you want to do this in the studio using real lights, that's perfectly fine. If you're not comfortable being in the studio and you prefer to do this in the software, that's fine as well. It'll be the same thing. Again, the lighting in the software, we've gone through it enough. You'll know all the issues that we're going to try to tackle today, you can tackle in that software at a full length figure scale. So if there's any questions about that, simply let me know and we'll work our way through it. But at any rate, that's kind of the plan of attack here. Let me just kill my phone. Okay. Okay, so I can't see any of you, which is a drag. Can't be with any of you, which is also a drag. What I would like to know right now, though, is, so I'm going to light this. This is, here, you'll love this. My wife is a hair and makeup artist. This is her creation. Can you guys see that? Yeah, we're going to call her Carol.
I love it.
Yeah, no, it's really well done. So she actually did this here. See if I can see this. Yeah, that's Carol.
Oh, Carol.
Yeah, no, she's made out of two, her clothes are basically two masks. Yeah, anyway. And of course, my wife, she's a hair makeup artist. She did her hair and makeup, looks amazing. At any rate, so we're gonna shoot Carol on this white background. That's the goal in all of this, or that's what I'm gonna try to do in all of this. Okay, so if you guys were to start this and you were gonna shoot her on white, what would be your first move? What's the first light you set up and actually get dialed in? Anyone?
The first light?
Yep.
I always try to set up my main light, my key light first, and kind of see what that can get me, and then add fills as needed.
And can you explain why you might want to do that?
Well, because I mean, like, if like you're going for a specific look with your main light, you want to get that dialed in and like see what areas you're going to need to fill light for, and then fill them and do it in reverse.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. The thing that you've got to remember in all of this is that your key light or your main light really sets the mood for the kind of shot that you're doing, but it's also lighting your subject. And so in that case, you have no choice but to get that part right. So you've got to get that part correct first, irrespective of everything else that's going on in your set. So, and you also need to accept the fact that your key light is going to have an impact on your background. There's no question about that. There's no way to get around that part of it. So it's going to have an impact on, there's light, it's going to hit the model. If I'm perfectly exposed on her, which is what I'm going to go for here, then that light is going to continue to fall on that background. And so setting the key light is critical to do it first. If you set your background lights or any other lights first, then you turn on your key light, it's going to have some negative iteration into that. So, you know, that's just where it's at. So anyway, hang on 1 second. I just got a text from Tom. Okay. So that's the plan. I use meters. I'm going to start with the light meter, and that's just the way that this whole part, I'm going to take you through the steps about how I would do this, and we'll simply go from here. I'm going to set my meter at 100 ISO at 125th of a second. And typically I will go through and I will do all of this with a meter first, and then I'll actually start taking pictures and see exactly where I land. But I typically will do all of this work using a meter first. So I'm going to turn on my strobe trigger, and I'm going to turn on my strobe. And I'm just going to do a meter reading at Carol. So I'm getting a meter reading here of basically F2, and I want to shoot at F8. What's the difference in F stops? Can we count them out together? So if I'm stopping down from from F2, I'm going to stop down 1 stop. What do I get to?
4.
2? No.
Wait, sorry.
That's okay. I go from 2 to 2.8.
Yeah.
The next stop down. Next stop down. 4.
It's
4,
Next stop down.
5, 6,
Next stop down.
8.
8. So that's 4 stops that I need to actually deal with here. So that's what I'm going to do on a little pack. So hang on one second. 32.7. All right, let's see how we did. So I'm at 564, means I need probably another 2/3 of a stop. So that's what I'm going to do. Can you see that? Perfect, right? Okay, so that's my first trick here, is to actually do that. So if I do a picture just of this, we'll see what it looks like. Okay, so I said 100 ISO, 125th of a second, F8. And let's see what Carol looks like. So you can see that there is, I've got clearly tone in the background. I've got a shadow that's kicking out behind her on the background. I'm going to look at the highlight on her forehead right there. It's telling me that she's got a 221 in the red channel. That indicates that I'm probably a little bit under on this, but I do have a color card, so I'm going to put that in right now. You definitely want to dial in your key exposure first, because it has an impact on every single thing else. I'm also going to move my camera over slightly to get a little bit more direct orientation on my color card. We talked about this. You guys did that whole exercise. What can you tell me about this color card right now? Anyone?
It's got a little bit of glare, but I don't know if it's really that much.
Yeah, I think it is that much. So I'm going to twist this out even a little bit more. So this is the difference in the two. This is where I was, and this is where I'm at right now. If we want to take a close look, and you can see the difference on the edge. The black edge right here definitely got glare in it. This one, not so much. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. I am going to just color balance this one single one and read my white patch value right here. And it's reading a 245 in here. What is that telling me?
You're good.
You are right. So that sets up that part. I'm feeling pretty good about him. So I'm going to put this off to the side.
Mercer, does that seem warm to you?
Again, you are now looking at it on an uncalibrated monitor through Zoom. I have no idea what the color is that you're actually looking at. But if you look at the readouts, like where my cursor is hovering right now, you can see that the RGB values are all equal. So that would actually indicate that this is color balanced. If I come down to what I really color balanced on, it's a straight 205. Yeah, it's 205. If you've got something that's like a 205, 206, 207, if they're that close, I have no problem with that. What you don't want is this, where you've actually got a 123, 124, actually, that's pretty funny. That can't possibly be true. Those numbers cannot be right. Yeah, something weird like that. So you've got a 0, 221, 181. I mean, it's just completely off. So at any rate, yeah, click on that. So yeah, I wouldn't trust this. Let me see the last time I calibrated this one. I'm not sure how Zoom handles the screen that it shows you. I don't really know how that part works. So, but let's just see. It's been a while. This is a computer I only use for these demos. So we'll see the last time I actually calibrated it. Yeah, this thing hasn't been, well, actually it was calibrated in September of this year, so only a couple months ago. So anyway, yeah, it's pretty close. But Carol's pretty warm. She's the girl who likes to spend her time in Florida. She stays at Mar-a-Lago. No, that's a joke. Okay, so I'm gonna reframe. And I'm back to kind of where I was before and sort of what we were talking about. If I look at my background right now, you can see my readings on this side, left side over here. Do you see my cursor when I'm hovering around on Capture One?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. This area over here, I'm reading in the, say like a 215. The other side over here, I'm getting like a 200. If I get deep down into the shadow down in here, it's a 129. And the truth of the matter is, this would be a perfectly fine, acceptable photograph. As long as we're here, we might as well just talk about a couple of the options that, other things that I might possibly want to do on this. Not going for a white background, but just thinking about shooting in general, and the way a lot of you guys have been shooting and what I'm going to try to talk you out of doing. So in this case, what you see is you've got a light that is on the left-hand side, and it's raking across her, throwing the shadow on the background. And everything about this light is predictable. It's easy to see. It's easy to understand what's going on. And therefore, in my opinion, it makes it look like studio light. It makes it look like not just studio light, but sort of a amateur studio light, for lack of a better way of putting it. And the reason I say that is that it's the simplest of all things. You've got a highlight on one side, you've got a shadow on the other side, and that's really the extent of it. It's fine. It's a pretty light. It's, you know, I mean, it's what Ellen Chrome made its living doing. That part was actually fine. But for me, it needs something that is either, for me, what I typically look for is something that makes it that wrong, that does not get explained about that. And so what I classically use in this situation, and we will get back to white, don't worry. I'm going to turn on my modeling light so I can actually see this. Of course, that modeling light would need batteries. Hang on one sec. So what I'm going to do is try to introduce something that would not be explained by this typical lighting situation. And basically, it's to kill some of the light that's actually coming on the left side like this. Ambient light check. And so now we've actually introduced something that does not explain necessarily what's going on. And I mean, it's not like it's rocket science, but the difference in these two sort of shows you it's like, instead of just being in a studio, even though the second shot is obviously in the studio as well, it starts to become more like doorway, windowway, something like that. I mean, it just changes things up. If we didn't really have the cast shadow on the floor and we were looking at it more like this, sorry, then it starts to become something else. Is this making sense to everyone?
Yeah.
Great.
Sure. I tried to do something similar in the software that you showed us, and the line was actually on the subject's face. But whenever I would get the flag in place, it would just render completely out, and it just wouldn't give me my shadow.
Were you using a flag or were you using a solid?
I was using the solid.
Okay. And how close were you to the figure, or how close to the light?
It was pretty close to the light, and you could clearly see the shadow on her face.
That's where your problem is. So watch what happens here. I don't know if we'll be able to see it, but I'll try it anyway. I'm going to pull this way back off to see if I can cast the same shadow. You saw in the beginning, I was extremely close to her. And you get a much sharper edge as I start to move away.
Oh.
That's the problem that you run into, right?
Yep. Gotcha. That makes a lot more
again,
sense now.
the way to think about this is, and hopefully you guys can see this with a flashlight. Let me kill this modeling light really quickly. Yeah, you guys can see that relatively well. So look at the light that's actually sitting on the background. If I have my, let's use a different light, hang on. This has got a lens in it, and I don't want that. Okay, light like this, and you can see, you guys can see fairly well the edge that this is casting, the shadow that that's casting. So this is when the edge is really close to my light, very soft edge. But as I start to move it further back, it gets sharper and sharper and sharper and sharper to the point that when I get down here, it's like tack sharp. So the issue that you're dealing with here is, again, to get those really sharp edges, you need smaller light source. So if I wanted this edge, if I wanted the edge on my scene here to have a sharper edge to it, because it's still pretty soft, what would I do to my main light? What are we talking about here?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, I want see this shadow, look on the screen for the Capture One that I'm using right now. And you can see it's a relatively soft edge. Well, I say soft, I mean, there's clearly an edge. You can see it running up the back of the seamless from that gobo that I added. But I want it to be even sharper. I don't want it to be, I want that edge to be sharper.
The light closer towards the thing that you're making the shadow with?
So let me ask you this. If I want that to be sharper, do I need more contrast or less contrast?
You want more contrast, and if you move it closer, you get more contrast, right? Because farther away is less.
Well, based on what you were just explaining with the flashlight, it would be the opposite. So you'd move the light away.
So what controls contrast? Rule number 1.
Power?
Distance.
Say what?
Distance?
Nope.
Size?
Size.
Good job.
What controls then? Rule number 2. What controls size?
Distance.
Exactly. So if I want this thing to be sharper, well, let's just look at it. We've got time, I think, a little bit. Hopefully I'll get through this. I'm going to carry this my main light back a good distance. So I've just moved that light directly back. I've probably doubled the distance to her. I'm just going to remeet her really quick. Sorry, I can't reach my trigger. I can't see my trigger at the same time. So I'm reading 287. So 2/8 and 2/3. I still want to be at F8. What do I do? What's the difference? Count it out. What's one stop down from 2/8 and 2/3? Come on, you guys, you've been doing this now for 9 weeks. 4 and 2/3. Next stop down, 5, 6 and 2/3. Next stop down,
8 and 2/3.
8 and 2/3. So I went from 4 to 4 and 2/3 was 1, 5, 6 and 2/3. So I need 2 and 1/3 stops. Let's just do it in ISO. So 200 would be 1 stop. 400 would be 2 stops. And didn't I just say I needed 2 1/3 stops? Ambient light check. Oh, looks like I've hit my camera too. Hang on. Oh, I don't have my trigger on my camera. That would explain volumes. So back to where she was. Exposure looks close enough. And again, I'm going to try my very same trick. Before and after. So this is where I am. You can see behind her, much softer line right here. Look at how sharp that line is right there. Also, look at how sharp the lines are on the shadow of her that's being thrown across the back compared to this. So you guys get where this is all going, right?
Yes.
Little feedback would help. I'm going to bring this light back in though, just to be able to manage this a little bit. But so I'm reading 566 right now. See what a color card says. Neutralize. 236. What's that telling me?
You're underexposed.
Yep. Any idea how much?
A little.
Again, there's no direct correlation to this, but a really quick trick to try to figure this out would be to go to your exposure slider, bump your exposure slider up by 1/3 of a stop. This is now in software, not in hardware, so be careful. 1/3 of a stop gets me to 242, so it's probably about a 1/2 a stop is what I actually need to put on here. So I don't have 1/2 stops, I've only got 1/3 of a stop. So I am going to do this just, no, I'm going to stay with my 100 ISO. And that did not come in. $247, good to go. All right, so kind of back where we started. All right, so this is the beginning of where I'm going to start working with to try to get this background to actually be white. So again, I'm reading values back in here that are in the 229s over here, 206s in the shadow. I've got a lot more to worry about there. So my next trick here is to light the background. And I'm gonna turn on big lights so that you guys can sort of see what it is I'm thinking about doing. So, and this is the hard part about setting it up, but it works with a scale just like this as much as it does full figure. So basically what I've got, I'm gonna reorient this camera so that you can really see. So here's the trick to setting this up when you set your side lights. So basically what I've got here, so you can see both of them. I've got two lights on this background. I've got one that's right here, directed on this background. And then I've got another one on the exact opposite side doing the same thing. So this is actually focusing on this background right here. So everybody can see that part, right? Is my camera okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So the trick in doing this is you do not want this light right here pointing at this edge. You want this light right here pointing at the far edge. And you want this light right here pointing at the far edge over here so that these lights cross in the middle. If you put this light right here, this spot will be hot. This light right here, this spot will be hot. And the middle will be weak. That's not what we want to do. So again, by crossing these lights, we're feathering these lights so that this one is raking across here, but primarily shooting on this part. This one doing the same thing over here. And so we will get a much more even background by doing it that way. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, the other thing, and this is the critical thing right here and why I tried to set this camera up like this. Where do you actually set these lights? And the trick to it is you need to set this light even with your figure. So if your figure was back here, these lights would push back here. They are even, they're on an even line with your figure right here. If I was to pull it up way up here, these lights would come way up here. They run directly at the same distance as the person right here. And there's a reason for that. And I'll show you what it is in just a second. So let me reset this. There's a reason for that. And the reason is this. I'm going to pan this down so you can see this one head a little bit better right here, or how I would deal with this. If I just turn these lights on right now, these are side lights, and they're both just going to absolutely drill this model, and that's not what I actually want to do here. What I'm looking to do is light up the background, but not her. So in order to keep it off of her, I've got foam core Vs. So this guy, it's just the same thing that we have in the studio. It's just a piece of foam core that I've cut and folded it so that it actually can stand like a V. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this in so that this keeps the light off of her, but lets the light fall directly on a line behind her. You'll see that by moving this card, if I move it like this, the line will move forward. That would actually hit her. If I move it back like this, the line will go right behind her. If I move it too far back like this, then it will hit this area back here, but there'll be a line that's in shadow way back here behind her. You want to get as close to her as you can possibly get without without actually letting light hit her. So I'm going to show you how that works. And this is exactly how I set it up. So this is Carol to the side. And you can see if I pull this out, she's actually going to be drilled by that light. So what I start doing, let me pull this back a little bit. No, let's keep it back like that. So what I do is I take this card, I actually stand where I know Carol's going to be, and I look at that light, and I just start to push this card in just to the point where I see that light disappear, and this card is now set. And then I do the same exact thing on the other side. And you can see that light. And again, I start to push the card in just to the point where you cannot see, where that light does not hit her. Now, this camera is causing a little bit of a complication only because you really need to be standing where Carol is, and I could not do that. Oh, here, let's try it this way. We'll actually move Carol out of the way. So I am going to mark where Carol is. And that's actually a really good lesson for all of you guys. You need to mark where your figure is going to be so that when you get this all set up, they actually come back to the same spot. Now, this is in place of Carol. So that's the light that's out. I take the card and I just start to push it in till I just lose the light. All right, there. And that's now set. I flip it to the other side, do the same thing, bring this in until I just lose it there. Now, if I've done this correctly, what you should see are shadows across the back from those lights that do not hit Carol at all. And I'll see if we can actually see one of those lights. And I don't know if you guys can see this, but can you see there's a highlight coming right off of this card and it's tracing right in and it's going right behind her. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
And then the same thing will be happening on the other side as well, although this one needs to back out just a little bit more. So that again, that line is running on the back. I don't know if I can get a light in both of them, but we can try. Yep, and you can see that there's where those lights are crossing are happening right behind her. And we should actually see that when we shoot. So let's see what that part looks like. All right, I'm gonna bring this camera back so you can see the overall again. So at this stage of the game, people will mistakenly turn off the main light and start to actually do the backlights by themselves. That's not what you want to do. Once you get your main key on, realize that it's going to impact the background. You've got to keep it on the entire time. So I'm going to turn on these guys now, my backlights. And I just need to get them even. So I want the same power on both. I don't really know what the power is right yet, but let me get the power on both the same. So I've got them the same. How would you guys, what would be your next move? Knowing that you wanted that background to be white.
Setting two lights which can wrap the lights around her in the background.
Right, but how do I decide what is white in Photoshop? Or in Capture One?
255.
It is 255. Is there a way that I can see if that's 255?
Get that the thing on the, what is it called, the color checker thing on the computer?
No,
Well, I guess not anyways.
that's okay.
Um,
How did you guys turn that gray seamless into white?
oh, the Y balance.
Nope, that would be color.
It was like a lot of light or something.
It's 3 stops from gray, right?
3 stops from whatever my normal exposure is. I need to, if I want that background to be white, it has to be 3 stops overexposed from whatever my normal is, correct?
Correct.
Right? Remember, logarithmic scale, right? So we went through all of this. If you want some background, anything in your image to be white, it needs to be overexposed by 3 stops, regardless of what it is. If it was a black background and I could have it overexposed by 3 stops, it would come out white on my image. If I have a white background, same thing. If I had a gray background, again, 3 stops over, it'll come out. What is 3 stops over and how do I meter that? Can I meter that? Come on, guys. You all did this as an exercise. You take a regular incident meter, you take the spot attachment for it, you pull the dome off, you put the spot attachment on. So now, if this is no longer an incident meter, what kind of meter is this now?
Reflective.
Exactly, and I'm simply going to meter the background and see what it says. So I'm reading 16:9, almost 22. What should it be? What, based on my normal exposure is going to be F8. What should the reading on that background be in order for it to be 3 stops overexposed?
Wait, did you say your meter on the back was 16?
Let's just call it 29. I'm sorry, 22.
22.
It's six, this meter works, it doesn't do thirds of a stop, it does tenths of a stop. So you can see right here, it's reading 16.9. That's a tenth of a stop away from 22. So let's just call it 22 for argument's sake.
So 22 to 16 would be 1 stop. 16 to 11 would be 1 more stop. And then to get to 3, we go from 11 to 8. So that's 3
Right.
stops.
So if I shoot this picture right now at F8, because this is the one that people screw up all the time. Why aren't I shooting the background at 3 stops open? 3 stops open would be 8 to 5, 6 would be 1, 4 would be 2, 2, 8 would be 3. Why aren't I doing it at F28? Think about what I'm talking about.
Your key light is already exposed.
It's nothing to do with my key light. It's the fact that if I meter a background at 2.8 and I shoot at F8, am I underexposing or overexposing?
Underexposing.
Radically. If, on the other hand, I meter at 22 and I shoot at f8, am I underexposing or overexposing?
Overexposing.
Which is exactly what I want to do, isn't it?
Yes.
All right, so let's see how well we did. It just happened to, got lucky and it landed on that number. We'll see how good it ends up being in the image. So just so that you guys know, I've never done this in this building. I've never done this in this studio space. I've never done this with a model. I've never done anything like this. So I'm winging this. Ambient light check. And look at that. I joke about ambient light checks, but can you guys see what's on my screen right now in Capture One?
It's
There's a very faint image on there, isn't there?
yeah.
Yeah.
And so all you guys, when you're in the studio shooting, you're thinking, okay, I can handhold this because it's strobe, and strobe is a spark, and sparks freeze things, and everything will all be good to go. But the problem with this is that this is an ambient light on top of it. So my strobe, when it goes off, may actually freeze something, but then there's going to be ambient light. And if I've got camera shake or anything else like that, I get motion on the edges of my image and it makes it look like it is not in focus. So I'm gonna turn off my big ambient light. I'm gonna try this again without my flash to really do a legitimate ambient light check. And now I am safe. All righty. So now we've actually got in our background up in here, I've got a 240, 54 on this side, a 247 on this side. I've got a 240 down here on the bottom. Down around her feet, I've got 222. On this side over here, I've got another. I'm gonna zip back out. I'm gonna back out a little bit more so you can see a little bit more of the floor that's in front of her. And you can see what you would probably expect. And I do have my side cards set correctly. Can you guys see the shadow that's running right along the floor?
Yes.
This is caused by those side cards. The fact that the shadow stops right behind her indicates that I've got the cards exactly where I want them. I want it to light the background, but not hit her. And you can see those cards on the side, on the edges, are not hitting her. If I look up at the top area up in here, I'm getting like a 234 in that area. If I look in the same area over here, I'm getting a 248. Why are these two different? My lights are exactly the same. What's going on here? Why am I not, this is a 250 over here, and this is a 237 over here. That's a huge difference. What is going on? Why is that?
Is it your key light?
And what about my key light?
Your key light is going from the left side of the image to the right side of the image, and because of her shadow.
You are exactly right. Remember this, guys. Her shadow is all in this area over in here. That doesn't go away. Light that's actually able to hit here from the key light is absent from here. So there's no reason to expect these two to actually be the same. Can I fix that?
Yes.
How?
Add a fourth light.
Add a fourth light? Where?
On her right side, and then flag her off. I don't know, maybe.
Anybody have any other suggestions?
To move your first light, so it's like on her instead of like at an angle.
Yeah, but then, so what, yeah, so you're saying take my key light and put it right in front of my camera so that I'm getting basically a flat light on her. But then I've got my lighting is actually driving my composition or the images that I want to make. And that is never acceptable in my book. Can I just turn this side light up? Why can't I just add a third of a stop to this light and not that one? Why do these have to be even? My background's not even.
That's true.
Right? So I'm not adding any lights. I'm not going to do any of that. I'm going to add a third of a stop to this guy right here. So that's my B light. And we'll do it plus a third. fire off another image. And we're at 240 now on this side over here. 251 on this side over here. I'm going to add another third of a stop to that guy. $254 on this side now, 255 on this side right now. So at this stage of the game, I am within a tenth of a stop, or not even a tenth of a stop. I am extremely close in this. So a way to see exactly what has been blown out white on this, to actually check, to give yourself a visual here, come up to your preferences for capture one, down to preferences. In the exposure setting, crank your highlight warning all the way up to 255. The reason I'm doing this is that, the reason I typically keep it at 250 is that I'm usually concerned about keeping detail. I want to know what's actually being blown out. But now I actually want to see what is actually happening at 255. I want to know what has gone to pure white or to page white. So I'm going to crank this up to 255 and say okay to that. And then I'm going to click on my warning and to see what's actually going on. And you can see that what's happening is pretty much what we would expect, that there is, I'm getting my 255 as I'm running through here, 254. If I take a look in this area up in here, you can see that it's actually a 252. There's a little bit of fall off that's actually happening here. However, I'm not concerned about that because the girl is being completely surrounded by white. So this area up here, I have art directors say this to me all the time. They go, well, this thing up here is not white. And I always say to them, if you just crop this girl out there and drop her on a white background, you don't need to worry. The edges are the only thing you need to carry about. But the floor, this is the big killer for me. This is nowhere near to that. If I start looking down in here, I'm getting a 222 here in the front of the floor. That's not even a light white. That's actually starting to move into middle gray territory. So this is the last of my problems, and this is the one that you see happen to people over and over and over and over again. People cannot get a clean floor. How would you guys actually get a clean floor? What can I do to get more light on that floor?
A reflector.
A reflector.
If I add a reflector to this, isn't that going to add more light to her?
Yeah.
And isn't she already perfectly exposed? Speaking of, we should check her exposure. Once we've added these side lights, there's a lot of light that's bouncing around in this room, especially because it's not a real studio. It's not black like it should be. So I got a lot of light bouncing around in here. I'm actually going to recheck my exposure on her, because I'm guessing the exposure on her has actually been lifted. So I'm simply going to come over to the side and do another card. And I'm reading 247. So I am okay. I didn't pick up enough light that I had to reset my key light. If I had, I simply would have dropped my key light down in power and I would be fine. So how else do I get more light? In front of, I need light on the floor, but not on her. And if you don't know, don't worry, you're not alone.
Oh, can we add
99% of the photographers in the world don't know this, but you guys are gonna. You Chang, were you saying something?
I'm just guessing, can we add a light from the background so it's not gonna light her, the front of her, but it's gonna light the back, I mean the floor.
You are absolutely right. We are going to add a backlight that comes in from behind. And if we do it correctly, then what will happen is it will hit the floor. It may hit her as well, but it'll be hitting behind her. So it'll give her an edge light, a rim light, all that kind of stuff. If we want to remove that, we can also remove that, but that's going to be the plan that we go after here. So to do that, I'm going to reset this camera for you guys just a little bit. And we're almost done, guys, and then you're going to have a chance to spend the rest of the day working on this. All right, I need to try to show you something here really quickly. So I'm going to apologize for the wobbly camera, but this is important. I'm a little tight on this guy, so I'm actually going to move Carol a little bit more forward on my set. So you can sort of see now, I just moved her a little bit more forward. So I'm gonna have to recheck my meter reading on the front because I just pulled her a little bit closer to that light. But what I wanted to show you is this right here. So what I'm trying to do with this light right here, so this is basically softbox that does have a baffle on it, and you really want this part here because this actually helps control the light and where it spills going down. But if we take a look at this, what I'm concerned about is the cove typically picks up, the cove in here typically picks up and reflects more light than does the background or the floor. So I'm trying to keep this light off of the cove, but on the floor that actually hit her. So in this case, if you see it from the side, it's actually pushed forward. I'm hopefully keeping it so that it does not come down and hit on the cove. And it actually has to be pushed a little bit more forward. And we'll see what we get. Did that make sense what I was talking about not having this hip? Are we good on that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems better. All right, really quickly, I'm going to turn this off. I need to recheck my exposure in the front because I moved Carol a little bit closer to the front. So I just want to do a quick check to make sure I didn't take her out too much. $248, she's still okay. And we're going to turn on the background light. So I can meter the background the same way I actually meter the floor the same way I metered the background. It's got to be D. Let me see what kind of power I've got on it. Ooh, too much. So again, reflected light meter, and I'm just going to read the floor. Reflected light meter turned on. So this is giving me 22.5. I think that's a little hot, so I'm going to dial it down a third of a stop. And see what it looks like. And you can see right now that I have got her completely surrounded. If we turn this off, you'll also notice she's got a pretty serious hair light going on her. However, what really is happening for her, what ends up being that light is being added to, you'll notice if you look at the front of her body that we're not adding any light to the front of the body. Where you're adding light are only the horizontal surfaces. So she's getting light, you're seeing it on the top of her head, you'll see it on the top of her shoulders, you see it right here on the top of her hand, and you usually will pick it up on the top of her boots as well. However, if I look down here, I can see that I am at 255. The problem is, and this is a huge problem, you guys need to look at this right now. So if you're wandering around, come back to your screen. As I start to move around here, I've got 255s all the way around there, right? I'm going to take my ISO, and I'm going to take my ISO up. Well, let's see how far we can go. 200 would be one stop, 400 would be two stops, 800 would be 3, 16 would be 4, 32 would be 5 stops, 64 would be 6 stops, 128 would be 7 stops. Let's just do 7 stops more light. So she's completely nuked out, but look at my readings on my screen. I'm still only getting 255, even though I'm 7 stops overexposed. So we need to worry that even though we got to our 255 here, is that overexposed or not? So we need to start dialing back to figure out if that's what's happened. So I'm going to take this back to my normal 100 ISO. Did that make sense to everyone what I'm talking about?
Yeah, that was
all right. It's the thing that you really need to be careful about. Just because you get to that 255 number doesn't mean it's correct. To find out if it's correct, again, I'm going to leave my warning on. I'm simply going to stop down 1/3 of a stop. If this is set correctly and I stop down 1/3 of a stop, this background should start to tear apart. That red should start to tear apart. And if I click on this, and we'll see, you can see that the floor did tear apart, but the sides did not. And that is telling me right now that these sides are too strong. I need to back them off. And the reason this is important, guys, is that if there is more light coming off of this background than should be, you are flaring. Again, you're getting more light. It's not just that this background is white. It is white and then some. There's too much light that's actually coming off of it. So at this stage of the game, I'm going to knock 1/3 off of both of my background lights. And try again. I'm still down 1/3. I'm starting to lose more on the right side than the left side, so I'm going to only start to pull more off of my left side. Take it down another 1/3 on both. And I'm starting to pull in and tear apart on this now pretty good. I've got the floors down. I'm starting to pull in. These sides are starting to come in. It's starting to no longer really silhouette her. So at this stage of the game, I'm going to go back to my normal exposure, which was F8, and hope and pray that I get all of that back. And you can see I do get all of that back. What's interesting right here is this part that's right around her feet. What's going on there?
Shadow from her skirt.
It is the shadow from her, and you will never get rid of that. That will always be there. If we take a look down in the reading value, we're at a 244. It's not the end of the world, but not too bad. However, I've added another light, so I need to again check to make sure that she is not overexposed. And if she is, the only thing I would change is my key light. And I'm at a 251 is exactly what I expected. So I'm going to knock 1/3 off of my key light. So I've got my key light is now exactly where it should be, but look what has happened now to my background. Because I pulled that 1/3 of the key light off, my background now is down as well. So I am going to reset those. I'm going to add 1/3 on the, I'm going to add 2/3 on the right side only, because I think that's the one that's the problem. And that's my B light. And that part is actually set now. We are good to go on that. But you can see that my floor now, for that very same reason, also needs to be bumped up. So I'm going to add a third of a stop on my backlight. I'm going to add another third on that backlight. Another third on that backlight. Another third on that backlight.
Make it brighter in light.
I know, but he's shooting right now. That's what he's doing right now.
Oh, what's that?
Nothing.
Well, things were going so much more swimmingly for me earlier. Another third on that backlight. Two thirds on that backlight. Okay, so I've added tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of light to this backlight, and I'm still not getting this to actually come up. It's slowly creeping up. Does anybody have any suspicions about what's going on here?
Not really.
Shitty lenses, and not that this is a real shitty lens, but I'm going to guess here that this is probably vignetting in the lens, and no matter what I do, I'm not going to get that out. So I'm going to simply keep the same lens, but I'm going to zoom out so that I get away from those edges. And you can see now I'm actually starting to pull in white that's actually on both sides. So again, I've got here, I'm creeping up to that part. So I'm feeling pretty sure that's what it was. Again, this will show you the difference. I'm getting that actually to come back in here, whereas it wasn't in here at all. So again, I'm gonna stop down to 9 just to check to make sure I'm okay on this and I'm not blowing anything out too much. And I've got still a little bit too much light that's on this side over here. So one last adjustment and we should be good to go. Yep. So that's at 9, F9, and this is at F8. And that is what you are looking for. So 2 things final, and then I'm gonna let you guys actually add it. I'm gonna pull off this warning. And I'm gonna zip in so that you can see exactly what I was talking about the light that's hitting the top of her shoulders or the top of her hand. You can see it right here. That light is coming over and clipping that part. You can get rid of that by using a gobo to actually gobo the light off of her, but still let the light hit the floor. So that's what I'm gonna do. To do that, this is what you do. Again, we're gonna go for another bit of a wild ride with the camera here, but I just need to show you what it is that you ultimately need to do. So you walk up right next to Carol. You get really close to her and you start to look up and you can see where the light is. That's the light that's actually above her. You can see that. And we're going to put in a gobo to actually cover the light on her. But from the back, we're going to bring it in. Again, you'll see how it gets rigged in just a second. I'm going to pull it in from the back so that I just cover the light. So the light is not hitting her. Sorry. The light is not hitting her, but that down here on the floor, that it's actually still hitting the floor. So I can sort of see here, you can see it probably better in the wider shot. So again, I'm going to be bringing this from the back, and what I'm looking for is to get the light off of her, but still keep it down here on the floor. And I can actually see that that's actually going to work right there. Does that make sense to all of you guys?
Yes.
Okay. The last thing I want to show you really quickly is, and it's a great trick that a lot of people use, and this will be it. This is flat matte paper. This, you can see, is shiny white material. So a lot of people will do this using a plexiglass floor. They'll simply put plexi down on the floor. We are going to instead simply drop this in. And the advantage of using this, it's got to come down a little bit. The advantage of using this is that this shiny surface that's right here, actually what this surface sees from my camera point of view is this background. So this is reflecting the background. So part of the light that's hitting the background is actually going to hit this guy and light it up. We'll see what it looks like. And you can see now that something did not fire. You can see now that I'm actually getting considerably more here on the front of this. Again, I would have to rebalance all of my lights. I've got to hit those backgrounds a little bit harder on this side over here, whatever. But the difference is that instead of a shadow that you get down here, you actually get more of a reflection. Does that sort of make sense to everyone?
Yeah.
Are we good on that part? Okay, so are there questions about any of this?
Not from me.
Then I need you guys in your teams to go ahead and set up and do exactly what I just showed you. But also for the assignment, for those of you, oh, everybody's shooting raw, so just I need 2 files from you for the assignment. I need one that's done at your normal exposure, whatever that is. I did mine at F8. You can do yours at whatever you want to do it at. But also what I need is 1/3 stop down so that I can make sure that your backgrounds are not nuking out, that they're not overblown. Does that make sense to everyone?
You said 1 stop down?
No, 1/3 stop down.
Oh, okay.
So 1 normal and 1/3.
Yep, 1 normal, 1 at -1/3.
Okay.
Are we good?
Yeah. Yes,
All right.
sir.
I'm going to stay on. I'm going to stop the recording at this point, but I'm going to stay on in the meeting. If there are any questions, if you need me to look at stuff, if you want me to, whatever, I'm here to finish out the day.
Okay. Can I ask you something? Yeah, I'm also asking. You can go first.
For sure.
Yes.
Quick question, because I don't think I asked it like correctly earlier about the homework. So me and Elliot both did separate images, right?
Okay.
So like I had mine on my program, and I was doing it, and he was helping me, and then he put his tear sheet up and did his, and I helped him, and we both turned those in. But do I need to turn in his as well as he does mine?
No. It's the only thing, guys, is that everybody needs to turn in files for an assignment, no matter whose they are. Yours, somebody else's, that part doesn't matter. But otherwise, I don't know. I have no idea that you and Elliot got together as a team and actually did this. So if you don't turn in something, I don't know that you actually did the assignment. If you turn in the same files, I know you did it. If you turn in a separate one because you did different pictures than Elliot, I also know you did it.
Okay, cool. That's all I need to know.
Okay. Any other questions?
Oh, Mercer.
Yes.
I do have a question for the rest of semester after Thanksgiving, which is for December.
Yes.
Can I doing the full remote like during December's class?
Yes.
Okay, because I'm going back to China and I'm just wondering if I can.
It's okay. Everybody is remote after Thanksgiving. All classes have. They set out an announcement last week. Everybody, whether you're here, China, doesn't matter. Everybody's going to be fully remote. So the things that we need to do to finish this class are either going to be in Capture One, because we've still got quite a bit to do in Capture One. We haven't done any processing or any color work there yet. And then we've also, in terms of the lighting, anything that's left in the lighting, we're pretty much doing most of it right now, but it will be in the satellite software. So you don't need to worry about taking gear back to China. That just would make things too complicated. We'll just plan on doing it in software.
Oh, and just one last question for the final, like, because I just checked the module, it has a final exam. Just wondering what's that, like a file we need to turn, or it's an actual exam?
So it's both. One is an exam. It's a written part. So you fill in answers like the quizzes we've already done in this class.
Okay.
And then the other is to actually set up a situation in the studio and light it.
All right.
And again, you'll just do that in the software.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Sure. Anyone else?
I have a question.
Shoot.
So when you would do this for like a full length like figure,
Yep.
how would you do the back, like the overhead light for the floor?
You do it exactly the way I'm doing it right now. You bring it in. We would use a much heavier stand. You would use one of those medium high roller stands, but the exact same way as we rig it right here. This is a small softbox that I'm using. You would probably use a medium, and you would bring it in from behind, just like this one is.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
Sure. All right, no, go ahead.
Can you throw me in a breakout room so I can talk to you?
Oh, sure. Hang on. Let me just go into my office. I'll be there in 2 seconds.
Okay.